I couldn't breathe. The lawyer's office in Sunnyvale Estates felt like a pressure cooker, even though the March air outside was crisp and cool. I stood there in my plain black dress, the same one from Grandma Vivian's funeral 3 days earlier, fabric itching like it had a grudge. Everything felt off. Mr. Patterson droned on from behind his massive oak desk, voice flat as the beige, HOA-approved walls. My brother Nathan loomed to my left, all smug confidence in his tailored suit like he was born for boardrooms. I never fit. To my grandson Nathan Bennett, Mr. Patterson read, I leave the family home at 142 Oak Ridge Lane, the Mercedes, and all liquid assets totaling $15 million for Bennett Properties. Nathan grinned like he just won the lottery. $15 million in real estate deals and rentals I never understood. Mom squeezed his shoulder like he'd cured cancer. Aunt Carol whispered to Uncle Jim. Everyone nodded like this was the natural order. My cousin got the jewelry. Aunt Carol scored 50 grand. Even my second cousin, who I'd met twice, got the classic car. Then Mr. Patterson's eyes landed on me. To my granddaughter Claire Bennett, my pulse hammered. I wasn't dumb. Nathan was always the golden boy for business. I just hoped for maybe some cash for art supplies or old books. She knew I lived for sketching. Instead, he slid a small yellowed envelope across the desk. The room went graveyard quiet, the kind where people pretend not to smirk. I stepped forward, hands clammy. The envelope weighed nothing. Nathan snorted first. A key? Seriously, Claire? That's what you get? The chuckle started like dominoes. Aunt Carol covered her mouth, but her shoulders shook. Mom patted my arm with that pity voice. It's probably sentimental, honey. You know Grandma always had a soft spot for your creative side. You were too gentle for all this money stuff anyway. My fingers shook opening it. Inside, one old brass key and a tiny card in Grandma's shaky handwriting. Unlock your true home, my Bella Bambina. That was it. No cash. No property. Just 5 words and a key that looked like it belonged to a junk drawer. Nathan's laugh cracked loud. A key to what, the doghouse? The whole room joined in, uncomfortable giggles turning mean. Karen Thompson, the HOA president who'd somehow weaseled her way into the reading as Grandma's dear friend, leaned back with a smirk that could curdle milk. Well, she purred in that fake sweet voice she used at board meetings. Some people just aren't cut out for responsibility. Rules exist for a reason, dear. I stood frozen while they congratulated Nathan like he'd conquered Rome. My throat closed. I'd spent every Saturday of my childhood at Grandma's, painting in her garden while Nathan chased soccer trophies. She taught me colors, stories about living free before all these silly rules. And this was her goodbye in front of everyone who already pitied me. The disappointment who got fined twice last year for unauthorized flower height and non-compliant porch art. That night, in my tiny HOA-approved beige box of an apartment, I stared at the key on the coffee table until tears blurted. Was this her way of saying, I really was nothing? Nathan texted later, drunk from his celebration. At least you got a key. Maybe it opens a storage unit full of regrets, LOL. I hung up shaking, not from sadness anymore. Anger. Grandma wasn't cruel. Never once in 28 years. So why this public slap? I pulled out old photo albums. Us in her garden at 6, my hands covered in paint, her laughing like I hung the moon. Saturdays were mine alone. Nathan was always too busy. She'd whisper Italian words she learned from her own mother. Bella for beautiful, Bambina for little girl. You have the Bennett heart, she'd say, touching my cheek. I didn't know what it meant then, but I packed a bag anyway. I owed her this much. 3 days later, I stood at the community bank clutching that key. The teller's eyes widened when I asked for the safe deposit box number on the card inside the envelope. That box hasn't been touched in decades, she said. I turned the key. Inside, a thick folder of legal papers and a flash drive. And a note directing me to meet a man named Antonio Rossi at the front gate in 30 minutes. My heart slammed. Antonio? Grandma never mentioned any Antonio. I stepped outside into the perfect Sunnyvale sun, and there he was, silver-haired, black suit, holding a sign with my name. Miss Bennett, he said warmly. Signora Vivian arranged everything. Please, the car is waiting. Un should viveran. But something in his kind eyes felt safe. Like Grandma. I climbed in. The black sedan rolled past the HOA sign screaming, "No flags, no tall plants. Paint must be beige 47. Antonio drove in silence until we passed the main gates. Then he spoke 6 words that stopped my world. You inherited the real Bennett empire. Empire? I whispered. He nodded. The land trust. The villa. The design company. Everything your grandmother kept hidden from the HOA and from them. The car turned down a private lane lined with cypress trees I never knew existed inside our gated community. My phone lost signal. We curve around a bend, and I forgot how to breathe. There was a 3-story honeystone villa glowing in the afternoon light, terracotta roof, green shutters, gardens spilling flowers everywhere. A fountain danced in the circular drive. This is inside Sunnyvale? I stammered. Antonio smiled. Officially off the HOA grid since 1978. Your grandmother built the whole neighborhood on this trust. The villa, the private parklands, the Bennett design house downtown that quietly approves every HOA-compliant renovation for a fortune. $50 million in assets, Miss Bennett. All yours. Black spots danced in my vision. Grandma ran a secret empire, while Karen Thompson fined residents for breathing wrong and pocketed half the fees. Antonio opened my door. Someone is waiting. The front door swung wide. A woman in her 70s, white hair in a perfect bun, pearls, rushed down the steps, crying in Italian I barely caught. She cupped my face. Madonna, you have her eyes. This is Rosa Castellano, Antonio said softly. Your grandmother's sister. The secret side of the family. The world tilted. Grandma had a sister? A whole hidden life? Rosa pulled me into a lavender-scented hug. Vivian sent you home, she whispered. Finally. Inside the marble-floored library, books floor to ceiling, golden light pouring through tall windows, Rosa set a leather box on the table. Your grandmother wrote these for you. Never sent them. One by one, I opened letters dated back to my birth. My dearest Claire, you have the Bennett heart, the one that creates beauty, not just profit. Nathan has the business mind. You have the soul. She explained everything. How she started the neighborhood as a land trust to protect families from greedy developers, but watched Karen slither onto the board and twist every rule into a weapon. The design house. Her real passion. Custom homes that looked HOA approved but cost a fortune in secret upgrades. She kept it quiet so Mom and Nathan wouldn't fight over in court. I cried reading how she watched me get fined for painting my porch railing unauthorized teal and thought, one day she'll understand. This is for her. Rosa touched my hand. Karen has been embezzling HOA funds for years. Your grandmother had proof. She waited until after her death so no one could touch it. I spent 3 days in that villa learning the empire. Rosa drove me downtown to the Bennett Design House, a sleek studio where artists created compliant blueprints that secretly charged premium. Workers cried when they saw me. I looked just like the portrait of my great-grandmother. Lawyers showed ironclad trust documents, filed decades ago in a different county. The HOA charter was a lease. I owned the land. Karen's fines? Illegal. The whole board answered to me now. At night, I read more letters under the library lamp. Each one healed something broken. I wasn't the disappointment. I was the chosen one. Then on day 4 the shouting started. I was sketching in the garden when Nathan's voice boomed through the open windows. I walked inside to find him red-faced in the marble foyer, Karen Thompson beside him in her power suit, arms crossed like she owned the place. You knew, Nathan yelled, pointing at me. You sucked up to her all those Saturdays and stole what was mine. Karen's smile was pure venom. As HOA president, I must inform you this villa violates at least 12 covenants. We'll be issuing fines retroactively. And that trust? Clearly elder manipulation. I felt the old fear rise. Then something hotter. Fines, I said quietly. On land I own. Nathan laughed meanly. Still the same boring Claire. A key and some old papers don't make you special. This should be split. Half mine. Half for the HOA to run properly. Karen nodded. Exactly. For the good of the community. Rosa stepped forward, voice ice. Your grandmother was no fool. These documents are ironclad. Italian roots in the trust name for extra protection against American courts. Nathan pulled out his phone. My lawyers are already on it. Elder abuse. Duress. We'll tie this up for years. Karen added sweetly. And until then, Claire, your garden art? Gone. That teal porch? Repainted beige by tomorrow, or we lean the property. The old Claire would have shrunk. But I'd read every letter. I'd walk the gardens Grandma dreamed of. I stepped closer. You want to sue? Go ahead. But these papers say I own the dirt under every house in Sunnyvale. Including yours, Karen. Every fine you pocketed? Documented. Every rule you bent for your friends? On the flash drive. Karen's face went sheet white. Nathan sputtered. You're bluffing. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Grandma saw me, Nathan. She saw you too. You get the money, you understand. I get the heart. And this heart, I gestured at the villa, the gardens, the empire. It's not for sale. Not for splitting. Not for your HOA empire of beige misery. They stormed out, still threatening lawsuits. But 2 weeks later, the lawyers called. Ironclad. Nothing they could do. Karen's embezzlement evidence went to the state board. She resigned in disgrace. Fines reversed, refunds issued. Her own house suddenly non-compliant under the new rules I quietly rewrote. The neighborhood breathed. No more citations for flower height. Residents painted porches teal if they wanted. I moved into the villa permanently. Quit my dead-end job. Worked remotely as head of Bennett Design, drawing homes that actually felt like homes. Rosa taught me the business. Even Nathan eventually sent a grudging text. Fine. You win. But I don't get it. I didn't need him to. Last night, I sat on the villa terrace under that golden honey-light Grandma always described. The final letter in the box, the one marked read last, lay open on my lap. My darling Claire, if you're reading this, you've found your true home. I was a coward about many things, but brave about this. A grandmother's job isn't fairness. It's seeing each child's soul and giving what it needs. Nathan gets riches. You get wholeness. Live here. Create here. Bloom here. Every sunset I watch with you, Bella Bambina. I folded it gently, tears happy ones now. That tiny key wasn't a joke. It wasn't pity. It was the master key to everything. Let Nathan have his 15 million and his beige empire. Let Karen slink away with her fake rules. I had roots. I had beauty. I had the Bennett heart. And for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I belonged, home. The days after the confrontation blurred into something almost peaceful, but I knew the storm wasn't over. Karen didn't just resign quietly. No, that woman had spent 15 years turning Sunnyvale Estates into her personal kingdom of nitpicking and nickel-and-diming. She'd email blasted the entire neighborhood the day she stepped down, calling me an outsider who manipulated a dying woman and warning that chaos would reign without proper standards. Chaos. As if letting people plant sunflowers taller than 6 inches was the apocalypse. I sat in the villa library that first week reading Grandma's letters again, each one a quiet dagger against the lies Karen had spread for years. One from 10 years ago hit hardest. I watched Karen find Mrs. Alvarez $250 for a wind chime. Said it was noise pollution. But I know the truth, Claire. She used those fines to fund her own kitchen remodel. The design house has the receipts. I laughed out loud, a bitter sound that echoed off the marble. Grandma had been playing chess while Karen played checkers with other people's money. Rosa, my newly discovered great-aunt who looked so much like Grandma at Hurt, brought in boxes of old ledgers the next morning. She kept everything, Rosa said, setting them on the oak table with a satisfied thump. Every HOA meeting minute, every bank transfer. Vivian knew one day you'd need the receipts to burn it all down. We spent hours cross-referencing. Karen had siphoned nearly $200,000 over the decade, disguised as community improvement projects that never happened. The community pool? Still cracked. The playground? Rusted swings. But Karen's vacation home in Florida? Brand new. I felt that hot flash in my chest again, the same one I'd felt when Nathan laughed at the key. Only now it had a purpose. I called the state HOA oversight board that afternoon. My voice didn't shake. I have evidence of systematic embezzlement by former President Karen Thompson. The woman on the other end actually gasped when I started listing dates. By evening, the neighborhood group chat, once a minefield of passive-aggressive complaints about my eyesore garden gnomes, exploded with screenshots of Karen's resignation letter and sudden questions. Wait, she really pocketed our fees. My $300 fine for Christmas lights, where did that go? I didn't gloat in the chat. I just posted one line. All past fines issued under legal authority are being reversed. New rules coming. No more beige prison. The replies flooded in. Heart emojis from people I'd barely spoken to. Mrs. Alvarez, the wind chime lady, showed up at the villa gate the next day with a plate of tamales and actual tears. I thought I was the only one, she whispered. She told everyone you were the problem. I invited her in for tea on the terrace overlooking the gardens Grandma had planned decades ago. We talked until sunset. Real talk, not the scripted HOA pleasantries. She admitted she'd stopped hanging her kids' drawings in the window after Karen's third warning. Now she wanted to frame them all. That's when I realized this wasn't just about me inheriting money. It was about giving the neighborhood its soul back. Nathan texted again that night, shorter this time. Lawyers say it's airtight. Mom wants to know if you'll at least split the design house. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Split it? So he could turn my artists into beige stamping machines? I typed back one word, no, then blocked him. Grandma's letter from 5 years ago had warned me. He'll try to make it about money. Don't let him. You were born to make beauty, not spreadsheets. The next morning, Antonio arrived with a thick binder, new bylaws I'd asked him to draft. We keep the HOA structure, he explained over coffee, but rewrite every rule. No more arbitrary fines. Community vote on changes. And the design house stays yours. Artists only, no Karen-approved color palettes. I signed every page with a flourish that felt like revenge and relief at the same time. But Karen wasn't done. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived at the villa, her lawyers claiming adverse possession on the common park lands because the trust was hidden. Adverse possession on land my grandmother had deeded to herself in 1978. The sarcasm practically dripped off the page. I forwarded it to the same oversight board with a single note. Exhibit A of continued harassment. That afternoon, the board investigator showed up at Karen's beige McMansion with a subpoena. I heard later she'd been caught shredding documents in her garage. The neighborhood watched from their windows like it was the best reality show ever. Mrs. Alvarez texted me a photo. Karen in yoga pants hauling boxes at midnight, looking nothing like the pearl-wearing president who used to strut at meetings. I didn't smile at the photo. Okay, maybe a little, but mostly I felt tired. Tired of the fighting. Tired of proving I belonged. Rosa found me on the terrace that evening sketching the fountain. You're allowed to enjoy it now, she said gently. Vivian didn't want you to spend your life at war. She wanted you to create. I looked at the sketch, wildflowers spilling everywhere, no height restrictions, no color codes. Then I looked at the villa, glowing gold in the sunset. For the first time, the word home didn't feel like a punchline. It felt like mine. The next week, I held the first open community meeting in the villa gardens. No HOA podium, just folding chairs and lemonade. People showed up hesitant, like they expected Karen to jump out from the bushes. I stood up and said the simplest thing. Grandma built this place so families could live, not obey. Let's finish what she started. They clapped. Actually clapped. And when old Mr. Jenkins, the guy fined last year for his American flag, Asked if he could fly it again. I said, every day if you want. The cheer that went up nearly brought tears. But the real moment came when Karen herself appeared at the gate, uninvited, face pinched. This meeting violates protocol, she snapped, clutching a copy of the old bylaws like a shield. The crowd went dead silent. I stepped forward, key still on a chain around my neck, the same key they'd all laughed at. Protocol? I asked softly. The protocol that let you steal 200,000. Her mouth opened, closed. For once the HOA Queen had no script. The board is open and audit, I continued. Your Florida condo? Nice. But the state wants the receipts. She turned and left without another word, heels clicking like retreating gunfire. The crowd didn't cheer this time. They just exhaled, like the whole neighborhood had been holding its breath for 15 years. That night, I opened the last unread letter in the box, the one Grandma marked only after the dust settles. My Bella Bambina, if you're holding this, then the empire is truly yours. I left the key small on purpose. Big gifts get fought over. Small ones get ignored until the right person picks them up. You were always the right person. Now, go make this place beautiful again. Not perfect, beautiful. I folded it and walked to the fountain. The water sparkled under the villa lights. Somewhere in the distance, I heard wind chimes. Real ones, not Karen-approved plastic. And for the first time since the funeral, I laughed out loud, big and free. Grandma hadn't left me a consolation prize. She'd left me the master key to freedom. And I was finally ready to use it. Weeks turned into months, and the villa stopped feeling like a borrowed dream. It started to feel like skin. I woke up to birds instead of HOA violation notices taped to my door. I painted in the garden without checking the approved plant palette. And every time I passed the old beige walls of my former apartment, I felt a little lighter, like I'd escaped a cult. But the neighborhood transformation wasn't instant. People still flinched when they saw a bright color. Old habits die hard when Karen spent years weaponizing them. So I started small. First, the community garden behind the villa, open to anyone. No height limits, no color police. Mrs. Alvarez planted marigolds the size of dinner plates and cried when no citation arrived. Then I quietly bought back a few of the worst fine houses through the Design House Trust, fixed them up with actual personality, and sold them at fair prices. Word spread. Claire's not flipping houses. One neighbor told another at the new Saturday market I started in the Parklands. She's flipping the rules. Rosa watched it all with quiet pride. Vivian used to say the same thing about you. When you were little, she told me one evening as we walked the vineyard rows. Yes, Grandma had planted actual grapevines on the private acreage no one knew existed. She said one day the little girl who painted fairies would paint the whole world freer. I laughed. She never mentioned the part where her granddaughter would have to fight a Karen with a spreadsheet. Rosa's eyes twinkled. She probably didn't want to scare you. The design house downtown became my favorite escape. I promoted Lucia, the head seamstress who'd known Grandma since the 70s, to creative director. Together we redesigned the entire approval process. No more forcing every porch light to match the community standard. Now, residents brought in their own ideas, and we helped make them work. One young couple wanted a rainbow front door. Karen would have died. I approved it in 20 minutes. The husband hugged me, so hard I thought my ribs would crack. Our kids finally have a house they're proud to draw, he said. That night, I sat in the library rereading Grandma's letters again, the ones about Nathan. Your brother has the numbers, she wrote. You have a heart. He'll sell anything for profit. You'll protect what matters. I hadn't heard from him since the block text. Until the morning a sleek black car, I recognized, pulled up the villa drive. Nathan stepped out alone. No Karen this time, just him in a wrinkled suit looking smaller than I remembered. We need to talk, he said without hello. I didn't invite him in. We stood on the stone steps like strangers. Mom's worried, he started. She thinks you're unstable. Living out here alone, changing everything. I raised an eyebrow. Unstable? Or just not letting you sell the empire? His jaw tightened. Look, Claire, the design house alone is worth $20 million if we liquidate. We could split it clean. You keep the villa. I'll even throw in the HOA board seat if you want it back. I actually laughed. Throw in the board seat? Nathan, I own the land the board sits on. I don't need a seat. I own the table. He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. You're really doing this? Playing house with Grandma's secret money while the rest of you what? I cut in, voice steady. While you laugh at my key in front of everyone. While Karen finds widows for wind chimes so she can vacation in Florida, Grandma didn't hide this empire because she was senile. She hid it because she knew exactly who would try to carve it up. He shifted, uncomfortable. She was sick at the end. Maybe she don't, I said quietly. Don't you dare. I read every letter. She planned this for 25 years. While you were at debate club, she was writing me about the Castellano, sorry Bennett Hart. The one that creates instead of conquers. For a second, something flickered in his eyes. Maybe regret. Maybe just calculation. Then he straightened. Fine. Keep your fairy tale villa. But when the lawsuits start again, they won't, I interrupted. The state closed the audit. Karen's under investigation. Your lawyers already saw the papers. Game over. He turned to leave, then paused. You really think you're better than me now? Because some old lady gave you a magic key? I touched the key, still hanging around my neck. Not better. Just seen. Grandma saw me. And that's something you never did. He drove away without another word. I stood on the steps until the car disappeared past the Cypress Tunnel. Then I walked back inside and opened the leather box one last time. Only one letter left. The very first one she wrote when I was 3 weeks old. My dearest Claire, you opened your eyes today and looked straight into mine. I saw my mother looking back. You have the Bennett eyes. The ones that see beauty where others see rules. Keep seeing, my Bella Bambina. The world needs it. I pressed the letter to my chest and finally let the last of the old hurt go. The key hadn't just unlocked a villa. It had unlocked me. And the neighborhood was starting to bloom right along with me. The first real test came 6 months later when the state investigator called me personally. MS. Bennett, we've completed the full audit on Sunnyvale Estates. Karen Thompson has been formally charged with embezzlement, falsifying records, and abuse of fiduciary duty. I sat in the villa library with the phone on speaker, Rosa and Antonio listening. How much? I asked. $247,000, the investigator said. She's looking at prison time if she doesn't plead. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt quiet, like the last page of a long, ugly chapter finally turning. What happens to the HOA fines she collected? Full restitution to every resident. We're using your trust records to calculate exact amounts. I thanked him and hung up. Rosa poured 3 glasses of the villa's own wine. Grapes from the private Rose no HOA rule had ever touched. To Vivian, she said. We clinked. Antonio added softly, and to the girl who finally used the key. That same week, the neighborhood threw an actual party in the parklands. String lights, music, kids running wild without fear citations. Someone hung a banner. Thank you, Claire. I stood at the edge watching Mrs. Alvarez teach her grandkids to make marigold crowns. Old Mr. Jenkins flew his biggest flag yet. And for the first time, I didn't scan the crowd for Karen's disapproving glare. She was gone. Moved to that Florida condo she'd bought with stolen money, according to the gossip. Good riddance. But the real gift came the night I finally finished redesigning the villa's main gallery. I turned one entire wall into a mural. Every letter Grandma wrote me painted in soft watercolor, her words blooming into gardens and fountains and free porches. Lucia from the design house came to see it and actually cried. Your grandmother would have loved this, she said. She always said you had the gift. I stepped back and looked at the finished wall. In the center, I'd painted the brass key glowing gold, surrounded by broken HOA signs. It wasn't just art. It was proof. The next morning, Nathan showed up again, this time with Mom. They stood awkwardly in the foyer like they weren't sure they were allowed inside anymore. Mom's eyes went straight to the mural wall visible through the open doors. Claire, that's beautiful, she whispered. Nathan cleared his throat. We saw the news about Karen. Look, I was wrong to push so hard. If there's any way, I cut him off gently. There isn't. But you can come to the community market next Saturday. Bring Mom. No strings. He blinked. Really? Really? Grandma didn't raise us to be enemies. She raised us to be different. And that's okay. Mom hugged me tight. First real hug in years. I never understood why she kept everything so secret, she said against my shoulder. But seeing this place, I get it now. They left lighter somehow. Not fixed. Family wounds don't heal overnight, but possible. That afternoon, I walked the gardens alone. The golden light Grandma always described poured across the hills like honey. I finally understood what she meant by follow your heart home. My real home had never been the beige apartment. It had been waiting here the whole time, behind the rules, behind the laughter, behind the fear. I sat on the stone bench by the fountain and pulled the very last letter from my pocket, the one I'd saved until the dust truly settled. My darling girl, when you read this, I hope the neighborhood is blooming again. I hope you're painting without looking over your shoulder. And I hope you finally know you were never the disappointment. You were the promise. Live loud. Love deep. Create without permission. That is the Bennett heart. And it was always yours. I folded the paper and tucked it back into the leather box for good. Then I stood up, keys still warm against my chest, and walked inside the villa that was finally completely home. The sun set behind the terracotta roof, painting everything the exact shade of freedom. And somewhere I swear I heard Grandma laughing, soft, proud, and completely satisfied. 1 year to the day after I turned that tiny key in the bank box, I stood on the villa terrace watching the neighborhood celebrate its first no-rules day. Residents had voted unanimously. Thanks to the new bylaws I helped write. For 24 hours, there were no fines, no color codes, no height restrictions. Just people living. Kids painted rainbows on sidewalks. Mr. Jenkins hosted a flag-raising ceremony with fireworks. Mrs. Alvarez strung wind chimes from every tree. And I sketched the whole chaotic, beautiful scene from the terrace, brush flying across paper the way Grandma taught me when I was 6. Rosa joined me with 2 glasses of wine. She would have loved this, she said, clinking her glass to mine. Chaos and all. I laughed. She planned the chaos. Antonio had retired officially last month, but he still stopped by every Sunday with fresh stories about the old days, how Grandma had quietly bought up parcels whenever Karen tried to expand her control. She always said one day the right person would use the key, he told me. Never doubted it was you. The design house was thriving too. We'd expanded into community workshops, free classes on color theory, gardening without rules, even how to fight your HOA and win. Lucia ran the advanced design track and had already mentored 3 young artists who were turning their own houses into masterpieces. One of them, a quiet teenager who used to get fined for chalk drawings on her driveway, won a local art contest last month. Her winning piece? A watercolor of the villa, key glowing against a background of broken beige walls. She dedicated it to the lady who gave us back our colors. I framed it in the library right next to Grandma's portrait. Nathan and Mom came to the No Rules Day festival. They didn't stay long, old habits, but Nathan actually smiled when he saw the rainbow sidewalk. Still think it's crazy, he muttered. But it works. Mom hugged me again. I'm proud of you, Claire. Your grandmother would be too. I didn't need the words anymore, but they felt good anyway. As the sun dipped low, I walked alone to the fountain one last time. The water danced like it always had, reflecting the villa lights and the wild gardens and the neighborhood beyond. I pulled the brass key from around my neck, worn smooth now from a year of carrying it. For a moment, I just held it, feeling the weight that had once felt like nothing. Then I smiled and tucked it into the leather box for good. I didn't need it anymore. The doors were already open. The rules were already rewritten. The heart was already home. Somewhere in the distance, music started. Real music, not HOA-approved elevator tunes. Laughter floated up from the park. Fireworks cracked overhead in unauthorized colors. And I stood there in the golden Italian light Grandma had promised me all those Saturdays ago, finally understanding every story she'd ever told. The Bennett heart wasn't about money or power. It was about seeing beauty where others saw rules. And I had seen it. I had kept it. I had set it free. Let the Karens of the world clutch their beige bylaws and laugh at tiny envelopes. I had the key all along. I just finally knew how to turn it. And now the whole neighborhood, my neighborhood, was blooming exactly the way it was always meant to. Welcome home, Bella Bambina.